And there were other moments in my life when it's a kind of an unknown thing that really keeps you awake and keeps you so keyed up and uptight.
When news broke that Dean Martin had died at his Beverly Hills home, millions of fans assumed the funeral would bring together the last surviving legends of Hollywood's greatest era. More than anyone else, people expected to see Frank Sinatra standing at the front of the church, paying tribute to the man who had shared stages, laughter, and decades of unforgettable memories with him. Instead, Sinatra was nowhere to be found. His absence stunned those in attendance. Reporters immediately began asking questions. Fans searched for explanations. Rumors spread that the two men had experienced a secret falling out, while others wondered if illness or old age had kept Sinatra away.
From my standpoint, he should be remembered as one of the finest human beings I ever knew in my life.
After all, their friendship had become one of the defining relationships in American entertainment. Together, they had helped create the legendary Rat Pack, transforming Las Vegas into the entertainment capital of the world and leaving behind performances that still define an era. If anyone should have been there to say one final goodbye, surely it was Frank Sinatra. But the truth behind his absence is far more emotional and far more complicated than most people ever realized. To understand what really happened, we have to go back more than 80 years to a time before either man became a household name. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin first crossed paths during the 1940s when both were struggling to build careers in the brutally competitive world of show business. Success in those days was anything but guaranteed. Every nightclub, radio appearance, and stage performance could determine whether a performer moved one step closer to stardom or disappeared into obscurity. Sinatra was already beginning to attract attention as the voice. His smooth vocals, emotional delivery, and unmistakable stage presence made him an instant favorite with audiences, especially young women, who quickly turned him into one of America's first modern music idols. Behind the scenes, however, Sinatra was intensely ambitious. He studied every performance, obsessed over every detail, and demanded perfection from himself.
What kind of a loss is this to the industry?
I don't know. I really don't know. Not yet, we don't know.
Dean Martin's journey looked very different. Rather than rising through radio and big bands, Martin earned his reputation in smoky nightclubs across New York before making his way to Los Angeles. His effortless charm, relaxed delivery, and perfectly timed sense of humor made audiences feel as though they were spending an evening with an old friend instead of watching a polished performer. Those qualities would eventually make him one half of the legendary Martin and Lewis comedy team alongside Jerry Lewis, launching him into national fame.
Debonair Dean Martin died today at his home in Beverly Hills, California.
By the late 1940s, the entertainment industry was surprisingly small. The biggest stars often found themselves performing in the same clubs, attending the same parties, and gathering in the same late-night restaurants after their shows ended. As Sinatra and Martin's careers continued to rise, their paths crossed more and more frequently. At first glance, they couldn't have seemed more different. Sinatra approached every performance with laser focus and relentless discipline. Martin appeared completely carefree, walking onto the stage with a drink in his hand and making difficult performances look almost effortless.
Martin's comedy act with Jerry Lewis made him a household name. But it was Martin's post-Lewis career that made him a star.
Yet that contrast became the very reason they admired each other. Martin respected Sinatra's extraordinary work ethic and fierce dedication to his craft. Sinatra, meanwhile, couldn't help but envy Martin's ability to stay calm under pressure, winning over audiences without ever looking like he was trying too hard. Each possessed qualities the other lacked, and that mutual admiration slowly evolved into genuine friendship. By the early 1950s, that friendship had become much stronger. They shared stages on numerous occasions and found themselves spending countless nights together in the rapidly growing entertainment capital of Las Vegas. At the time, Las Vegas was still writing its own history. Glittering casinos were opening one after another. attracting celebrities, gamblers, producers, politicians, and businessmen from across America.
Oh, don't be nervous, folks. Dean is fine. He just fell in the wine cellar.
After the curtain fell each night, the real action often continued behind closed doors, where the biggest names in entertainment gathered for private parties that lasted until sunrise. Sinatra, already one of the city's biggest attractions, frequently invited Martin to these exclusive late-night gatherings. They weren't simply glamorous parties. They were places where careers were shaped, friendships were strengthened, and business deals were quietly made over cocktails beneath the glow of casino lights. For Sinatra and Martin, those nights created something far more valuable than professional connections. They created trust. Despite their completely opposite personalities, the two men balanced each other perfectly. Sinatra's fiery passion and perfectionism were softened by Martin's calm, unshakable confidence, while Martin often relied on Sinatra's drive and loyalty when difficult moments arose. Together, they formed a partnership built on respect, humor, and unwavering friendship, a bond that would eventually become one of the most iconic relationships in Hollywood history. As the years passed, Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin's friendship grew stronger with every performance, every late-night conversation, and every unforgettable evening in Las Vegas. They celebrated victories together, laughed through failures, and understood the unique pressures that came with living under the constant spotlight.
He's a little bit drunk, a little bit high, but we love him, so why fight that?
What began as mutual respect slowly evolved into one of the most recognizable friendships in entertainment history. By the beginning of the 1960s, that friendship reached its most iconic chapter. Sinatra and Martin stood at the center of the legendary Rat Pack, joined by Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford. Together, they transformed Las Vegas from a gambling destination into the entertainment capital of America. Their shows weren't simply concerts or comedy acts. They became cultural events where music, humor, improvisation, and personality blended into something audiences had never experienced before. The Rat Pack represented much more than 5 famous performers sharing a stage. It became a symbol of effortless confidence, loyalty, and style. Every appearance was carefully planned behind the scenes. Yet once the curtain rose, it felt completely spontaneous. That illusion became part of the magic. Sinatra commanded attention the moment he stepped under the spotlight. Every song was delivered with precision, confidence, and emotional power. Dean Martin offered the perfect contrast. Relaxed, smiling, and seemingly unconcerned by anything, he made every performance feel casual, even though years of experience stood behind every perfectly timed joke and effortless vocal performance. Together, they created a chemistry that simply couldn't be manufactured. Their friendship had been built over years of shared experiences, and audiences could feel that authenticity. It wasn't acting. It was genuine affection wrapped inside world-class entertainment. Nowhere was that chemistry more obvious than at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas.
I'm not lazy. They want to think I'm lazy, but they know I work.
Night after night, the showroom filled to capacity as fans hoped to witness something unforgettable, and they usually did. No two performances were ever exactly alike. One evening, Sinatra might interrupt Martin with a playful insult. The next, Martin would deliberately forget a lyric just to watch Sinatra struggle to keep a straight face. Sammy Davis Jr. would jump into the exchange, Joey Bishop would add another joke, and before long, the audience felt less like spectators and more like guests watching a group of lifelong friends entertain each other. That spontaneity became their signature. Behind the laughter, however, Sinatra remained the perfectionist. He carefully managed the pacing of each show, making sure the musical performances stayed sharp while allowing just enough freedom for improvisation. Martin balanced that structure with his relaxed personality, delivering off-the-cuff remarks that appeared completely effortless. Together, they created a rare balance. Organized yet unpredictable, polished yet natural, disciplined yet endlessly entertaining. Their influence quickly expanded beyond the stage.
The only reason I work is to provide for my family.
In 1960, the Rat Pack brought their chemistry to Hollywood with Ocean's 11. Starring Sinatra, Martin, Peter Lawford, Sammy Davis Jr., and Joey Bishop, the film followed a group of charismatic friends planning an elaborate Las Vegas casino heist. While audiences loved the story, much of the movie's appeal came from something impossible to script. The friendships felt real because they were real. Viewers watched the film believing they were getting a glimpse into the private world of the Rat Pack. The jokes, the teasing, the relaxed conversations, and the effortless confidence all mirrored the relationships the actors shared away from the cameras. For millions of fans, the line between fiction and reality almost disappeared. Throughout the decades, Sinatra and Martin became the faces of American nightlife. They weren't simply entertainers anymore. They embodied an entire lifestyle. Elegant tuxedos, casino lights, late-night performances, celebrity parties, and endless charisma combined to create an image that defined cool for an entire generation. Whether appearing on stage, in films, or at high-profile events, they seemed inseparable. Their individual success only strengthened the legend they created together. Looking back today, the Rat Pack era represents one of the greatest periods in entertainment history. Sinatra and Martin helped redefine music, comedy, film, and celebrity culture, leaving behind performances that continue to inspire nostalgia decades later. Their partnership appeared unbreakable, and few people could imagine seeing one without the other. But time has a way of changing even the strongest friendships. As the 1970s arrived, the demands of separate careers, changing priorities, and deeply personal challenges slowly began to place distance between Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, setting the stage for a chapter neither man could have anticipated.
When I work, it's serious work. And the serious work that I do, I try to have a little fun with it.
As the 1970s unfolded, the friendship that had once seemed inseparable began to change. There was no dramatic argument, no public betrayal, and no headline-making feud. Instead, life gradually pulled Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin in different directions, as changing priorities and painful personal experiences quietly reshaped the bond they had built over decades. Sinatra showed no signs of slowing down. His relentless work ethic continued to drive one successful project after another. He recorded new albums, headlined sold-out concerts around the world, and appeared in prestigious television specials that reminded audiences why he remained one of America's greatest entertainers. Even as musical tastes shifted and younger artists dominated the charts, Sinatra refused to fade into the background. His image remained remarkably consistent, confident, disciplined, commanding, and seemingly unstoppable. Whether performing in Las Vegas, New York, or overseas, he approached every appearance with the same perfectionism that had defined his career from the very beginning. Dean Martin chose a different path. After decades of non-stop performing, recording, filming movies, and hosting television shows, he slowly began stepping away from the spotlight. Success had brought him everything he could have imagined, but it had also brought constant public attention, endless travel, and years of exhausting schedules. Gradually, Martin found himself preferring quiet evenings and private moments over sold-out theaters and television cameras. Then, tragedy changed everything. In 1987, Dean's son, Dean Paul Martin, was killed in a military jet crash. The devastating loss shattered Martin in ways that few people outside his family fully understood. Friends noticed the change almost immediately. The easy smile was still there on occasion, but the energy behind it seemed diminished. His famous sense of humor became less frequent, and the man who had spent a lifetime entertaining millions increasingly withdrew from public life. He accepted fewer performances, rarely sought publicity, and spent more time away from Hollywood than in it. The bright lights that had once energized him no longer offered the same comfort they once had. Frank Sinatra watched his friend retreat and tried to help. In 1988, he organized what many believed would be a triumphant reunion. The Together Again tour featuring himself, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. For longtime fans, the announcement felt like the return of the Rat Pack. It promised one more opportunity to witness three legendary entertainers sharing a stage and reliving the chemistry that had made them icons. Excitement spread quickly. Audiences expected laughter, unforgettable music, and the effortless camaraderie that had defined an entire generation of entertainment. But reality proved far more complicated. The demanding travel schedule and constant performances were difficult for Martin, who was still carrying the enormous emotional weight of losing his son. According to several accounts, he also felt increasingly uncomfortable within the production, where Sinatra's larger-than-life personality naturally dominated both on stage and behind the scenes. The playful balance that had once made their partnership feel effortless no longer came naturally. There were still flashes of the old magic. Occasionally, a familiar joke would land perfectly, or an old exchange would remind audiences of what had made the Rat Pack so unforgettable. But those moments became exceptions rather than the rule. Before long, Martin made the difficult decision to leave the tour early. His departure spoke volumes. It wasn't simply about demanding performances or physical exhaustion. It reflected how deeply time, grief, and changing priorities had transformed both men. The carefree friendship that once thrived on late-night laughter, endless conversations, and spontaneous performances could never fully return. Sinatra remained driven by the stage. Martin found peace away from it. By the end of the 1980s, the relationship between the two legends had settled into something quieter. The bond, built over decades, never completely disappeared, but it evolved into a friendship rooted more in mutual respect and shared memories than in constant companionship. They no longer spent endless nights together in Las Vegas, yet neither forgot what they had accomplished side by side. As the 1990s began, another unavoidable reality confronted them both. Age was catching up. The men who had once seemed larger than life were now facing the same physical limitations as everyone else. Dean Martin continued living a largely private life, while Frank Sinatra also began experiencing serious health problems. In 1991, he suffered a heart attack, shocking fans around the world and serving as a powerful reminder that even the man who had appeared indestructible for nearly half a century could no longer escape the passage of time. Frank Sinatra survived the heart attack, but it marked the beginning of a difficult final chapter. Doctors urged him to slow down, something that had never come naturally to a man whose entire career had been built on relentless discipline and constant performance. Over the following years, his health became increasingly fragile. He battled recurring pneumonia, experienced episodes of memory loss, and no longer possessed the endless energy that had once allowed him to dominate concert stages around the world. For decades, Sinatra had projected an image of complete control. Whether performing before thousands of fans or commanding a room full of Hollywood's biggest names, he seemed almost untouchable. Now, for the first time, age and illness were beginning to catch up with him. Dean Martin was fighting his own battle. Years of heavy smoking, countless late nights, and a lifestyle that had defined an entire era gradually took their toll. He developed severe emphysema along with several other chronic health problems that left him increasingly weak. Public appearances became extremely rare, and invitations to perform were often declined. The man who had once effortlessly owned every stage he stepped onto now preferred the quiet comfort of home. Friends noticed that Martin had little interest in returning to the glamorous lifestyle that had made him famous. Instead of casino showrooms, television studios, and celebrity parties, he surrounded himself with only a small circle of family members and trusted friends. Privacy, something he had rarely enjoyed during the height of his fame, had become far more valuable than public attention. Although Sinatra and Martin no longer spent much time together, the bond they had built over decades never completely disappeared. Their friendship no longer needed constant phone calls or regular performances to exist. It had been forged through years of shared victories, unforgettable nights in Las Vegas, blockbuster films, and moments that only the two of them truly understood. Even as distance grew between them, that history remained impossible to erase. Like many lifelong friendships, theirs had simply changed. The playful relationship that once filled theaters with laughter gradually became something quieter. An unspoken understanding built on mutual respect, shared memories, and the recognition that both men had witnessed each other's greatest triumphs and deepest struggles. Still, the 1990s were marked more by silence than reunion. The days when audiences eagerly watched Sinatra tease Martin from across the stage, only for Martin to answer with perfect comic timing, had become part of entertainment history. Fans could only revisit those magical moments through old television specials, films, and concert recordings. The Rat Pack no longer existed as a living phenomenon. It had become a legend. While Sinatra occasionally continued recording music and making select public appearances, Martin withdrew almost entirely from professional life. The charismatic entertainer who had once seemed larger than life now lived quietly, far removed from the bright lights that had defined his career for nearly half a century. Then, on Christmas Day in 1995, the entertainment world received heartbreaking news. Dean Martin had died peacefully at his home in Beverly Hills. He was 78 years old. There was something especially poignant about the timing. Christmas is a holiday associated with family, warmth, celebration, and togetherness. On that very day, America lost one of its most beloved entertainers. For millions who had grown up listening to his music, watching his films, or laughing through his television appearances, it felt as though an entire chapter of Hollywood history had quietly come to an end. Behind Martin's trademark smile, smooth singing voice, and effortless charm had always been a man who carried private burdens. He had endured enormous personal loss, declining health, and the emotional weight of spending much of his life under constant public attention. Yet despite those struggles, audiences remembered him for something much simpler. He made people feel good. News of his passing spread quickly across the country. Fans, fellow entertainers, and longtime colleagues reflected not only on his remarkable career, but also on the unique qualities that made Dean Martin impossible to replace. They remembered his flawless comedic timing, his warm vocal style, and his rare ability to appear completely relaxed while delivering performances that required extraordinary skill. Unlike many celebrity deaths that unfold amid overwhelming media attention, Martin's final days remained remarkably private. That privacy reflected the man he had become during his later years. He no longer sought the spotlight or public admiration. Instead, he spent his final chapter surrounded by those closest to him, away from the cameras that had followed him for most of his adult life. His funeral, held at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles, reflected those same values. Rather than becoming a massive Hollywood spectacle, the service was intentionally small, quiet, and deeply personal. Family members, close friends, and a limited number of longtime colleagues gathered to say goodbye to the man whose effortless charm had once defined an entire generation of entertainment. For those in attendance, it was a fitting farewell. Dean Martin had spent decades making millions of strangers feel like close friends. In the end, however, his own goodbye was reserved for the people who had truly known him beyond the tuxedo, the microphone, and the legendary image the world would never forget. Those invited to Dean Martin's funeral represented the people who had truly known him beyond the fame. Attendance was intentionally limited to close family members and a small circle of lifelong friends who had shared decades of laughter, work, and unforgettable memories. Among them were Jerry Lewis, Martin's former comedy partner, longtime friend Don Rickles, and beloved comedian Bob Newhart. There were no elaborate performances or Hollywood spectacles. Instead, the service was filled with quiet reflections, heartfelt stories, and deeply personal farewells. It was exactly the kind of goodbye Dean Martin would have wanted: private, dignified, and centered on the people who mattered most. Yet one absence overshadowed every other detail. Frank Sinatra wasn't there. For millions of fans, it was almost impossible to understand. How could the man who had shared so much of his life with Dean Martin stay away from his funeral? The question immediately fueled speculation. Some believed the friendship had ended badly. Others assumed there had been a falling out that the public never learned about. But the reality appears to have been far more heartbreaking. By the time Dean Martin died in December 1995, Frank Sinatra was no longer the larger-than-life entertainer the world remembered. Years of non-stop touring, recording, and performing had taken a tremendous toll on his health. He was battling serious heart disease, and those closest to him also described a noticeable decline in both his physical strength and memory during his final years. Even routine travel had become difficult. The man who once commanded sold-out arenas with unmatched confidence was now struggling with the limitations of age and illness. Simply attending a public event had become a significant challenge. There was another reason his absence may have been intentional. Dean Martin had spent much of his later life avoiding publicity. Unlike Sinatra, who was accustomed to the spotlight throughout his career, Martin increasingly preferred privacy. His family deliberately chose to hold a small, intimate funeral rather than a public celebration that would attract thousands of mourners and overwhelming media attention. Everyone understood what would happen if Frank Sinatra walked through those cemetery gates. Television crews would immediately abandon the funeral itself to focus on him. Cameras would follow his every movement. Newspaper headlines the next morning would likely feature Sinatra rather than Dean Martin. The quiet farewell Martin's family had carefully planned could easily have turned into an international media event. Some who knew Sinatra believed he understood that. By staying away, he may have been giving his friend one final gift, a funeral where Dean Martin remained the center of attention instead of becoming part of another Sinatra headline. Perhaps the greatest reason, however, was the most human one of all. Several people close to Sinatra later suggested that he was simply too heartbroken to attend. Their friendship had experienced distance during later years, but that distance never erased nearly 5 decades of shared history. Together, they had built careers, conquered Las Vegas, starred in films, entertained millions, and created one of the most recognizable partnerships in American entertainment. Attending the funeral would have forced Sinatra to confront the loss of not only a friend, but an entire chapter of his own life. Sometimes grief becomes too heavy for words. Sometimes it even becomes too heavy to face. Just over 2 years later, on May 14, 1998, Frank Sinatra also passed away at the age of 82. With his death, the Rat Pack era truly came to an end. Sinatra and Dean Martin had helped define a generation of entertainment unlike any before or since. Together, they created an image of effortless cool that blended extraordinary musical talent, quick wit, timeless style, and genuine friendship. Their influence stretched far beyond Las Vegas. They helped shape American popular culture itself, leaving behind performances and memories that continue to captivate audiences decades later. While their friendship changed over the years, as so many lifelong friendships do, the respect between them never truly disappeared. The final chapter of their story wasn't defined by bitterness or public feuds. It was shaped by age, personal tragedy, declining health, and the quiet realities that eventually touch every life, no matter how legendary. So perhaps Frank Sinatra's absence wasn't a sign that he cared too little. Perhaps it was because he cared too much. What do you think? Was Sinatra's decision to stay away an act of respect, a consequence of his failing health, or simply the unbearable weight of losing one of his closest friends? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this story and want more fascinating, untold Hollywood stories like this one, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.